In order to use your digital scrapbooking supplies efficiently, it is important to learn how to change the colors of elements. You may have a wonderful kit in greens, but you might want a bow that this kit does not contain, and you might find this bow in a different kit, and it might be orange, and so you could bring it into your layout and change it to a color to fit that green kit. And this is a great way to make any of your kits look like something new. I have here a bead or a ball that I made, and I'm going to divide this changing color tutorial into I think 3 videos, because it does contain so much information, and this is going to be one really long video if I make it into just one. The basic way to change colors, and especially if you have something that is a solid color like this, is to go to the Enhance drop-down menu, Adjust Color, and then go to Adjust Hue Saturation. Now you see next to this is a Control+U code. You can just click Control-U on your keyboard and it will also bring up this pop-up box. Now this is what makes digital scrapbooking so fun, is that you can just sit here and play with sliders. You can see as I change the hue slider, the ball is going to change colors universally. I mean, you'll see how this is a lighter shade of this hue out here, and they are all changing consistently. The second slider is the saturation slider. If you move it all the way down, it turns black and white. If you move it all the way up, the colors get really intense. And the bottom one is the lightness slider, and you can make the ball really dark or make it really light, and it's really fun to just sit here and play with the sliders until you see something that you like. It's fun to especially do this on mats and things while you watch your photos pop. I'm going to hit cancel so I get my red ball back. Sometimes your element, as I have in this layer, might be grayscale or black and white, and so when you bring up the Hue and Saturation box and you move the sliders, nothing happens. To fix this, there is this box down here that says Colorize. Check that box, and now you see you're going to be able to move the sliders. I'm going to hit cancel for now. I have a third element here, which is a button, and I can change it just as I did with the ball, but you'll see all of the colors change, and sometimes we don't want all of the colors to change. I might just want, I'm going to hit cancel so it goes back to its original color. I don't want to change these on purpose because I want to permanently, because I want to continue to share all the techniques to change colors. If I want to, say for instance, just change the green in this button, I can click in this master drop down menu, and these are called channels, and I can click this green channel and move the slider, and it's going to change all the greens in my layout, and you can see it's not changing it very much. I'm going to revert and bring that back up. If you click on this channel or any channel, you'll notice that now when I put my cursor out over the button, it is changed to the Eyedropper tool. This first eyedropper down here is to select one color at a time that you want to change. And so I could go out here and select this green. And now you can't see it, you have to visualize it in your head, but this green of the stripe is now selected, and I can move the slider and you'll notice that the purple is not changing. If I want to grab all of the shades of the green, I can click on this second eyedropper which says add to sample, and each time I click on another green, another shade of green, it is going to add that to the selection. Now when I move the slider, it changes those greens without affecting the purples also in another way. This is the way I prefer to change individual colors in an item. I'm always going to the Hue and Saturation. However, there's another tool that's very similar to the way I just showed you, and that is the Replace Color tool. And when you bring it up, it has these eyedroppers just the same, and I can click to select a color, and you'll notice this time though, instead of imagining it in my head, I have a preview, and it shows me every bit of that green that is selected that will be changed when I move the sliders. I can do the add to sample just as I did in the other. Learning this helps you understand the previous way that I just showed you. And you can see as I'm clicking, more and more in this preview is showing up. Now I can move the sliders just as I did with the other, and this is working exactly like the Hue and Saturation box. The only difference is that you're able to see what you have selected, and in addition, this box of color, if you double click on it, it brings up the Hue and Saturation box. And if I want to go to a specific color, maybe something that I've gotten from a paper, and this code down here, maybe I want to manually type in the color. If I can choose an orange in my case, I want to make everything that I've selected in the button an orange, or I can manually type it in and be very specific, and I go back and you can see that it's all now orange. So this tool does do a little bit more than what I showed you in the Hue and Saturation. We can go back to the Hue and Saturation, and if you click on the masters, you can see that it does very similar. And we do have boxes down here that I have played with and never fully understood, because as you see right now, it's not making any changes. And so that's going to be it for part 1 of this tutorial, and I hope you've learned a lot. I encourage you to get out and play and have some fun changing colors of all of your elements, and stay tuned for part 2. We're going to continue with the changing color tutorial, and I'm going to hope that maybe we only have part 2 instead of 3 parts for this video. I skipped part of the written tutorial that I want to go back and highlight, and that is that you can make a selection of your element and change only the colors that are in that selection. For instance, let's say I draw a circle on just on an odd area of this button, and I go and I bring up the hue adjustment layer, watch what happens. Only the colors within that selection change. So that you can, let me deselect, you can utilize this really well with the Magic Wand selection tool. If I have Add to Selection selected, I can click, let me undo. Let's try to take this contiguous off so it gets all of the green over the entire button. And now I'm going to add this shade of green and this shade of green till I have, I'm not going to take a lot of time doing this, but till you would have all the different shades of that green, and then you can go and use your hue and saturation, and you'll see the green is changing colors but the purple is not. So that is also another way that you can change colors. Next, I want to highlight the sponge tool, but before I do that, I'm going to take you back into the hue and saturation, and I want you to take a moment again to see that the first slider is hue, the second slider is saturation, and the third slider is lightness. When I go and use the sponge tool in just a moment, the sponge tool is going to have the same effect as using this saturation button. When I go to use the burn and the dodge tools, it's going to have the same effect as using this lightness slider. I'm going to close that out. I've made a duplicate copy of my button because this is going to make more permanent changes to my button. Here are the three tools I was just discussing. The sponge tool has some options here to desaturate or saturate, and also flow. Flow, if you have it up high, is going to make drastic changes. Down lower is going to make subtle changes. Just as with all brushes, you can use your bracket keys to change the size of the brush. And right now I have it on saturation, and you can see, let's make my changes more drastic, that it is really saturating those colors. If I want to put that back, I'm going to desaturate it, and you can see it's taking that right back down. I'm going to hit undo twice to get back to my original button. So that sponge tool changes the saturation. The dodge tool and the burn tool both change the lightness slider. The dodge tool is going to move that slider to the right and make things lighter. The burn tool is going to move that slider, make my brush bigger. It's going to make that slider move to the left and make everything darker. You'll notice that both of these have ranges where you can make darker or lighter just the shadows, the midtones, or the highlights. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that button, make me another button to play with. It's a new layer. The next thing I'm going to share with you is the new adjustment icon layer. This circle that's half black and half white will create an adjustment layer, and there are a variety of types of adjustment layers, but the one I'm going to show you today is the Hue and Saturation. Now watch in the layers palette what happens when I open this up. You'll see the Hue and Saturation box, which we're becoming familiar with, opened up, and it created a new layer above my button layer. What is great about this method of using the Hue and Saturation is that it is not a permanent change. when I move the sliders, it works just as it did when I showed you before. In fact, if I go down here to the channels and select my colors, it works just the same. I can click OK if I think I'm happy with the changes. If I make this layer invisible, you're able to see just that button layer again, the original button layer. I'm going to apply this again, and if I double click on this thumbnail layer, it brings the hue and saturation box up again, and I can continue to make even different changes than before. What also can be done with this is to click on this mask, and of course you would need to go to some of the masking tutorials to learn more about it, but you'll see if I'm in the wrong tool because I was playing earlier. If I take my black brush and draw, you'll see over here on the mask layer that it has drawn that little squiggly that I have provided, and it is making it so this adjustment is not applicable where that black is. If I drew and change that back to white, now you'll see that's all white and it's applicable to everything. Another thing I might note is if you have a paper layer down lower, this adjustment layer is going to affect everything on your entire layout. It's not doing much right now to my white background layer because it is white, but if there was a pattern colored layout background there, this right now would also be changing the background. To make this so it only affects the button layout, you press Ctrl G on your keyboard to group those together, and then that will not affect any other layers but this button layer. One last, I'm going to create another layer for me to play with. One last tool to share with you, and I will confess I've been sitting here playing with it and I cannot get it to work really well. But under the brush tool is the replacement tool. And let's go ahead and make the foreground color an orange color. And I have already selected as my background color one of the purple colors. And what this brush does is it changes your element to whatever the foreground color is, and I'm actually, so you can see how drastic it is, going to change this mode to color. The first button is a continuous sampling, and so it will sample continuously to change the colors of the button to the foreground color. If you use the second one, wherever you click down first is what it's going to sample, and by sampling it's supposed to be choosing what color it will recolor to the foreground color. I know that sounds a little bit confusing, but you can see it working there. And the last button is going to use a sampling from the background swatch, and so my background swatch you'll see is this purple, and so if I click out here, I'm just going to click once, you will see that it changed the purples, but it did not really affect the greens as much. But I will, as I said, I will confess I've been sitting here playing with this, and it just does not seem to be working quite the way it did when I remembered playing with this in Photoshop Elements 3. I'm not quite sure if I'm doing something wrong or if things are just messed up in Photoshop Elements 6. So I'm actually anxious to head off to the other computer to open up my PSE3 to see how this tool works, because you can see there it's supposed to only change what is purple underneath my layout, and when I clicked there it changed what was green, and so it doesn't seem to be working properly. Maybe I can update this tutorial someday if I ever get to playing with this tool more. I think maybe solid color items it might be better to play with. I understand this tool is really good for red eye, fixing red eyes, or fixing those yellow eyes that we see in our pets sometimes. So I may come back and highlight this tool later, but you're welcome to play with it and see if you can get it to work for you. There have been so many ways I've shared with you to change colors, and I sure hope that you find a way that works best for you. As I stated in the first tutorial, I most often just use this. I hit Control U on my keyboard, and if I want to change specific colors, I will go and use the eyedropper and change those specific colors that way. That's how I have found it to be quickest and easiest for the purposes I need. But there are so many ways that I just hope that you find a way that's comfortable for you, that you prefer to use. And if you have any questions, certainly ask in the forums, and I'll be around soon, hopefully, to try to help you.